Yes, ma'am.
Great. Last week, the White House disbanded the controversial Election Integrity Commission because without finding widespread evidence of voter fraud. Following its disbanding, Chris Kobach claimed he would, and I quote, be working closely with DHS and the White House on this issue. My final question, Mr. Chairman, could you please specify, does Mr. Kobach have an advisory role or any role at DHS on this matter or any other matter?
He does not have an advisory role. He is, as you know, a Secretary of State. We're working with all the Secretaries of State to ensure the integrity of our systems. But no, he does not have any advisory, informal or formal role.
Thank you.
Senator Combs.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for a chance to continue questioning you on some of the issues I'd raised previously and a few additional. First, about conditions of detention. On September 26th last year, the ACLU filed a complaint asking DHS to investigate 10 cases of pregnant women who were held for weeks at detention facilities in California and Texas, despite a memo signed by Acting Director Homan last year barring the practice, quote, absent extraordinary circumstances or the requirement of mandatory detention. I also raised this in person with then Acting Director Homan. The complaint by ACLU alleges at least 2 of these women miscarried while in ICE detention centers because of insufficient health care support during detention. How many pregnant women are currently in ICE detention centers? And what has DHS done to ensure they get the health care they need?
Sir, I can't give you the number, but the guidance that you referenced by Acting Director Homan goes into quite some detail about the provisions and support that ICE detention centers would provide. Many of the instances, I believe, that have been in the press are actually in our sister agency related to HHS, so we're working with HHS as well to ensure that the policies are aligned.
Thank you. The administration sought in this year's budget proposal, FY18, that we're now well into, to cut funding for the Port Security Grant Program by half, from $100 million to $50 million. And I understand there's a proposal being discussed to cut it even further to $36 million. Needless to say, this program is important to a number of ports on the Delaware River. My home state is Delaware. Why do you think it's prudent to significantly reduce investments in port security?
What I believe, sir, is that what the administration did was look at all of the grant programs across the board from a risk basis. There are other risks that we need to address, so it's more of an allocation issue. It's not to say there isn't a risk at the ports. As you know, the Coast Guard continues to be very involved, as do other parts of DHS and the government that help with the security of the ports.
In April, Senator Rubio and I introduced the Counterterrorism and Screening Assistance Act, and there is a companion in the House. It would strengthen the ability of our allies and partners around the world to track terrorist and foreign fighter travel in particular. Directs DHS to provide appropriate versions of Custom and Border Protection's global travel targeting and analysis systems, software, and other systems to foreign partner governments. And it also authorizes DHS to provide excess non-lethal equipment, supplies, training to foreign governments to further U.S. Homeland Security interests. Does DHS support these goals, and in your understanding, would it support the passage of this bill?
To prevent foreign fighters from coming to the United States? Absolutely. Yes, sir. We'd look forward to working with you on it.
We'd appreciate your engagement on that. About 4 months ago, Hurricane Maria slammed into the island of Puerto Rico, and both the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico particularly, and to some extent Florida, suffered significant damage, but it was catastrophic for Puerto Rico. What's your sense today, 4 months later, of roughly what percentage of the island has power and water?
Well, the power, as you know, goes up and down. We're around 60 to 70% water. The story with water is a little better, but there's a lot more that we need to do, sir. It's going to be a road of recovery. We need to continue to work with them.
And what's your sense of the official death toll in Puerto Rico as a result of Hurricane Maria?
So I know they're looking at that. As you know, it's a state and local determination to determine causation. We've been in close contact with the governor as he does his review and assessment. It's an important figure for us all to understand.
Do you believe your department's response to Hurricane Maria could have been better?
I believe that we learn lessons as we go. It was an unprecedented response, is what I can tell you, both from a pre-positioning to an immediate response to the men and women who are there on the ground now. We had one of the largest surge forces that we've ever had, meaning we had people coming from all parts of government to join with FEMA. But I'm very anxious to learn the lessons learned and to see how we can do better in the future.
I'll say, while I'm grateful for the service of those United States military and FEMA who responded, I think it could have been and still needs to be.